Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the House of Footy podcast. I'm Jack Hudson, and joining me, as always, is AFL legend Warren Tredrea. Tredders, how you going?
I'm good, Hutto. Footy's nearly back. Bring it on.
Not long. We're in the midst of the preseason, a bit going on, and this past week there's been a lot going on. Concussions and the retirement of Angus Brayshaw, which is a real loss for the game. So, what have you seen out of it, Tredders? The concussion sort of focus, and then obviously um, Gus's retirement. Not great at all.
No, it's not great when you ever lose a player past, the present or in the future to retirement. But it's also, I'm always been a believer it's a reality.
Yeah,
It's a fully contact game. The AFL's done everything they can to mitigate head knocks, albeit a full contact sport, 24, not 24/7, but I mean, you're living in it. You're training in it. You're trying to even look at potentially capping bits of training that's been reported in newspapers around the country. And the reality as a player, your job is to win the football in the toughest of contests, whether it's contested marks or contested possessions or clearances. That's what is the weight in gold, and then ball usage on the other side of it. So it's sad that we see a player like Angus Brayshaw, who's a premiership player at Melbourne, have to give into retirement with 5 seasons left on his contract. So he was medically retired by the game, which is out of Melbourne's hands. When Melbourne obviously re-signed him, they knew that he had multiple concussions because he never used to wear headgear, but wore headgear. There was the incident, obviously, last year in the final where Brayden Maynard went to jump, left the ground to smother a ball, didn't smother the ball, missed it, then landed and collided with him, and concussion was felt. And obviously, given what's happened from a medical point of view, the league has felt they had to retire him from the game. So no one wins out of that situation. The discussion around what Maynard did was crude. No, it wasn't. We'll
no.
get to Powell-Pepper shortly. He was playing what he thought to win the ball, to play the contest, and people need to understand. You use super slow-mo to work out where contact was made, whether it was a bump to the head or a shoulder or whatever, but then play it in real time because the game's played in real time, and sadly in real time. This player, Angus Brayshaw, is now lost to the game with 5 seasons left on his contract. The big question then is, because he's medically retired by the AFL, there's not really a medical precedent here in
Mm.
terms of strategy for clubs and their list management. So I suspect that some of it will be injury payments. The rest portion will be left to Melbourne. Because we've seen instances recently. Marcus Adams, Paul Seedsman sat on Adelaide's list for an extra year, and then Paddy McCartan, which got an errant boot for two players wrestling for the footy. Tom
Mm.
Marshall and Paddy McCartan, I think it was round 3 last year, or round 4 last year in Sydney, never played again. So, and none of those guys had long-term deals. So it'll be interesting to see how the AFL holds this. I just feel like there's a bit more transparency coming with that sort of stuff. And I think you look at all the clubs, they probably want to see this as clarity to see where things go going forward, because we know there's huge litigation facing the game
Yep.
that has been publicly revealed. Um, lawyers say the insurance companies will be on the hook for it, but then what do the premiums look like? And legal people say waivers work, some don't. I think it's an interesting bit in the game. The AFL's not messing around; they're serious about this, and I think if we all get on the same page in terms of getting clarity for our fans and what contest looks like, the better for everyone.
And I think we've seen how serious the AFL's taken it. Sam Powell-Pepper rubbed out for 4 rounds of the AFL season, so he'll miss games against the Eagles, Tigers, D's, and Bombers. Not great um, for the young lad.
Well, it's not, but I thought his attack was on the footy. He attacks the footy with brutal instinct. He
Yep.
he does what he's coached to do: push up, press up, put pressure on. I think in this instance, and that's where when I sat back and thought 4 weeks, would it potentially be 3? I thought there was a chance to it, and I think from what I see with the reporting, is Port put up a really good case handling this, because biomechanists were involved. Because Willie Rioli's tackling Mark Keane at the time and pulls him into his I guess you could say, contributing to the concussion of Mark Keane.
Mm.
But the reality is, I love the maturity how Powell-Pepper handled it. He did a doorstop with 7 years in Adelaide, and he said, firstly, I want to apologise to Mark. I actually text him straight after the game and I apologise. I play hard, tough and fair. I got this one wrong, and I'm in the hands of the MRI. I really love that mature approach from him. So, but the reality is, I think the thing is, and you always get on social media to have a look and see
Mm.
what's the pub feel like on this one. There
Yeah.
was people want to hang him and sack him from the game. Ridiculous. I think that was just stupid. People not understanding that slow mo versus real life. And I think what I saw from the reporting of the situation, I think the biomechanist said he had 0.6 of a second to make a decision. And it's not, as I keep saying, it's not like Neo in the Matrix. You can't just lean back and get out of the way of the bullet. Once you're committed to a contest, you're committed. And it looked like he actually tried to, I felt he looked to try and mitigate because it didn't look like a drop the shoulder bump. I thought it was doing what he had to do to push up and put pressure on for his team and got it wrong. And I think the game moves forward from that. But it has set a precedent of four weeks. And I think now the sentiment from a lot of fans is we just want consistency now. So if we're seeing similar incidents, it's going to be four.
Yeah,
and whether that's in a prelim final or on the eve of the finals or in a preseason game like this case, take out the player. The issue is concussion. From an insurance and litigation point of view, we need to be doing everything we can to have a safe workplace because that's a reality how it's moved from football the last 30 years. Now, it's no longer part-time employment or playing a game. It's a full-time employment, a job and a big business. So they need to mitigate the risks and understand why they're doing it.
Yeah, consistency is the biggest issue facing tribunal stuff at all because like incidents look differently, but you have to sort of grade it similarly. If a player's been absolute pole action in an incident like that, you're going to have to, you've set a precedent now. We'll head to the mid-season trade period. And obviously, a lot of people want to see it happen. It happens in pretty much most sporting leagues in the world. The coaches have shared their thoughts. Obviously, there's some mixed feelings. Craig McRae, Ken Hinkley, both big fans. And the Scott brothers sort of not totally convinced yet, Treaders.
No, they're not. Like Brad Scott's pretty much says he worked at the AFL last year before last, so he's like, I don't want to take a step back. He goes, I think there's a couple of steps we need to address before it. The fluidity of player movement needs to be addressed, and it's a little fly that's just annoying me. Don't worry about that. It needs to open up a little. He goes, we've got a situation where quite often players announcing in a contract that they're leaving a club, but the reality is they're not a free agent. So he was big on this transparency and where things sit. Chris Scott goes, we've actually got a difference of opinions internally at Geelong. So their discussions he finds interesting. And even if people who live in that space can't quite explain how the contract situations would work. So, is it going to be as simple as, what generally sport does is look elsewhere and how it works. Do they want to be a situation where English Premier League, and I floated on this podcast before that if you had a player, then you needed a ruckman and someone had 4 ruckmen and 2 were playing in VFL and dominating but not getting a game and walk into other AFL teams, could they go to a team where they're going to get an opportunity for the next 10 weeks, potentially plus finals? Well, that you'd have to have some sort of deal in your salary cap or space in your salary cap to do that deal. Or do you give them a short-term pick, a mid-season draft pick, or, does money change hands in your salary cap and you give them some relief? Who knows? I think there's all ways to deal with this. But I think the mature response from a lot of coaches, and I know Ken Hinkley's quoted as saying optimistically, I think it can work. But he says simply, if we think it can work, you've either got to pull the lever and say, do it or don't do it, because if we're not going to try it, we're not going to know it's going to work. So I think there's just going to be time. There'll be think tanks. There'll be different ideas. And even Craig McRae, I really love hearing him talk. I love hearing his insights.
Yeah.
How he's always wanting to learn and get better. Even when he said, well, will I see myself at Collingwood in 10 years? No, I won't be here in 10 years. It's not a long-term thing. Like, I think he's got a good feel for life. And, his quote was, I'm a massive fan. And he has a huge quote and goes through all the details. But the key bit to the start is, I'm a massive fan of this. I think the game will be better for it. I don't think there's any losers. I haven't thought through every detail or every discussion of what it could or couldn't be. But, he's effectively saying he's a huge fan for it. The advancement of lists, how do you work out the details? Do you have to give up a first or second round pick? He goes, Dan McStay for me comes to mind. If we're lucky enough to qualify and he's not available, right, because he's done had a knee reconstruction in the preseason, and there's an asset out there, meaning a player, that we could do with now, I think people will make choices around those things. And I think it's a perfect scenario. Lose a player, have a deficiency on your list, do that. If you don't go this way, that's fine too, but then work in a system where you go, actually, we want some experience. We might have to carry a bloke one more year playing sample VFL waffle going forward on the chance. Maybe a senior player like a Jack Zeeble, a Travis Boak, a Rory Sloane in Adelaide, who go on this year with no promises, knowing that they could be up and down a bit, and that adds to your depth that you could use come finals time, or an extra ruckman, and get a mature ruckman instead of an 80-kilo 6'6" ruckman. He's going to take years to develop. Yeah, I think these are all the mature discussions that footy clubs and the game needs to look at.
It would be very interesting to see how list management sort of molds with that. And speaking of list management, a few contract extensions. Ben King's staying up for 2 years, and then two big ones with Harry Sheasel and Jordan Ridley at their respective clubs extending till 2030.
Yeah, I think this is smart. Obviously, Ben King's made every noise as a Gold Coast. If you're a Gold Coast fan, to say he's not going anywhere. He signed an extension into 26. He's arguably got the best coach in the game. Has been attracted to the club on, I think, a 6-year deal. He says we've got the right people ready to contend for a premiership. He's 23 years of age. He's a young forward. He's only going to get better the next 5 or 6 years. Clearly had some injury issues over the time, but he's never made any noises like he's going home.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, if you're a Suns fan, you'd be really happy at. Harry Sheasel's dominated for North. Signed a mega contract extension. But what's a classic is he's in his second year of footy, senior footy. He'd signed until 26 anyway. Now he's added another 4 years through to his deal to 2030. So that'll add, obviously make him a very rich boy. But he's a gun young player. So North Melbourne fans are going to go, yep, love it. And then the other bit too is when you have guys locked in long term, and the salary cap's gone up by 30% the last few years, and the last year and the next 2 years. So, players who are on 500 grand are now 700 grand. Blokes are on 800 grand or over $1 million. You know what I mean? Like it boosts really quickly. This guy's going to be really well looked after in the transitional North Melbourne list. And we know that Mackay moved on to Essendon on big bucks, and North to bring in some complementary players, but also some super young talent. So they're effectively following Hawthorn's model of 04-05 when Alistair Clarkson walked in. Get top-end talent, retain top-end talent. The beauty of signing young guns is, once they're out of their minimum contracts for the first 2 years, they can front-end deals. They can almost still pay 100% of the salary cap while these guys are developing. They've been looked after. Then they can retain the next mob, or they can push money back. And I think that's the challenge for all footy clubs is there's a salary cap everyone works and abides by, but it takes the smarter clubs to work out, well, hang on, if we kick this guy, Harry, out to 2030, wow, how many years have we got to play with now? You know what I mean? So you lock away a super talent, and then that adds flexibility to what you're able to do to down the track if you want to attract free agents or other players who might want to turn home from interstate, those sorts of thinkings, and they're all the different thinkings that North Melbourne will be doing right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the Shears move is a very smart one by North Melbourne. I obviously lost Jason Horne-Francis as well in terms of the young talent, so retaining that young talent for years to come. North are going to be a good side, and I do agree with you. I think he is doing the same thing at North, like Clarko, that he did at Hawthorn.
Yeah, but it's also with that retaining, Horne-Francis wanted to move home for his reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's no different to Jordan Dawson leaving Sydney for his reasons. That's a reality too. You can't keep everyone happy and everyone there. But I think if you got yourself settled, you got your fundamentals right, you got good support networks. I've always been a thought that if your culture's good and your club's well set up and well run, the go home factor, and even I've had this confirmed by player managers over the last couple of years, it's overrated.
Yeah, it's just about culture.
Yeah, it's culture. Culture's king.
Speaking of first round draft picks, so Harley Reid, obviously a very big topic over in the West, Shredders. Peter Sumich, the West Coast champion, quit his column at the West Australian. He's been writing there for 18 months. They promoted him, offering insight, no holds barred perspective on all footy matters. So when he went insightful and no holds barred on a young first overall draft pick, they thought it was a bit too much, and he's pulled the plug.
Yeah, it was funny, isn't it? He's done an interview publicly and said, I was on Harley Reid. I gave the kid a pump up and I said he's going to be a good player, but everyone's carrying on like he's going to be Chris Judd. I put down, he's no Chris Judd. I was there when Chris Judd was there, and I saw Chris first hand in his first 2 or 3 years. The kid doesn't even compare to Judd. So I don't know what people are carrying on. So Suma doesn't mess around. He's pretty straight at it. The kid is going to be a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's not going to be Chris Judd, mate. Well, to be a Chris Judd, mate, he's got to be a Brownlow medalist, multiple best and fairest winner. Well, in the end, multiple Brownlow medalist, premiership winner, premiership captain at the time. So I can understand his point. I find it interesting in a sanitized media. Sometimes people love they're hanging out for people to actually speak out on stuff. But when
Yeah.
people speak out on stuff, you can't go, well, yeah, you can't publish. And I get he's probably walked from his deal because he wants to say what he thinks. But there was also a mention that I said he's got a little bit of puppy fat and he needs to tidy this up. But that was it. So others have totally pumped up this kid. And let's face it, when we talk about pumping up this kid, he's a super young player. And West Coast want positive media off this guy because he's their number one pick. He's the best young player in Australia for last year. He already looks great. He's taken on Elliot Yeo, I'm told, in preseason competitive drills. And Yeo is, when fit, one of the most powerful units in the midfield in the comp. Obviously had his injury troubles over that journey, but this is the guy that's also spent probably 40 out of the last 50 days on the front page of the paper. So, yeah, and let's be honest, they need positive messaging. And you just wonder whether this was just him or was this just they didn't want to annoy the Eagles because the Eagles are a very powerful club. And then the other side of that too is the broadcast rights owner, Channel 7, actually own this paper as well. So, yeah. Kerry Stokes owns it. So who knows where this has come from, but I don't, by the sounds of it, it wasn't super offensive. Maybe
No.
they're worried about the kid's mental health. Yeah, but then you probably need to chat to the other media on day one. They broke down his training session, and in the first week of young kids coming in, they're not up to speed with professionals. They don't do much of the stuff. He sat out this, he stretched his hamstring, he had an ice pack on. It turns into paralysis by analysis, but it is interesting that a person who's left the game. Is it a little bit like Mitchell Johnson over in the West when he clipped a few on Dave Warner in the preseason for the cricket? Maybe it's a Western Australian thing. I don't know.
Well, playing with like, I'll ask your opinion, or your expertise on this. Like Port being probably the equivalent to Fremantle in the West in terms of the stature of the media coverage. Do you ever remember while you were playing a sort of media hype similar to what West Coast and the West Australian have given to Harley Reid? And
Uh, I don't know. Don't know. I don't remember. I know I played at the end of my career, Twitter was kicking off. You know what I mean?
mm,
Facebook was sort of around, but it's obviously the digital footprint. And we've even seen it now from TV viewing audiences, which is on the decline over a period of time because the digital audience now reaches far greater. And I still
yeah,
remember one media buyer said 80 or 90% of it, $80 or $90 of every $100 goes to Facebook or YouTube. So I think it comes into the consumption levels too. But, I still remember when Byron Prickett arrived. I still remember when young new recruits arrived. There was that. Yeah, but really the majority of my career, it was the afternoon drive show on 5AA Sport. It was 6 p.m. news or the paper the next morning, and even breakfast radio only did a little bit on sport. So, but as we know now, every club's got a website. They've got their own data bank of all the email addresses. So sponsors want to get a hold of that to sell new cars or buy new phones or do all those sorts of things. So the consumption of media is very different. I know with my kids, it's TikTok or Snapchat for news,
mm,
probably more. Yeah, and then YouTube for videos, and then a bit of Netflix and a bit of live sport. Things change a lot. So it's changed significantly. But I get there is that human focus and that's turned that way because it is so saturated. And I was also someone that said, "You want to write something bad about me?" Yep, ammunition. It's wood on the
yeah.
fire. Some people didn't operate that way, and I get if that side can be very consuming.
And I'll reshape it sort of like you hear players, they say, "Oh, I don't pay attention to outside noise. I don't pay attention to what's written and all that." You said yourself just then you used it as ammunition. How
Yeah.
many of your teammates back in the day would have, or how much do you reckon these current players would actually use that sort of stuff as ammunition
Well,
themselves?
that quote was used when I was playing. Oh, I don't listen, I don't watch. But even if you
Yeah,
don't, you got a family member to go, "Oh, are you okay?"
yeah,
And what do they go? "Oh, no, why? Yeah, I'm fine." "Oh, did you see? Oh, okay, you didn't see the paper." "Oh, no, it's okay." "Oh, what did they say?" And I guarantee you, if it's a family member, they said this, this, and this. So you're like angry, or if you take it, if that weighs you down, you probably feel a bit depressed and feel a bit attacked. Then you go and read the quote article. And I don't read articles unless it's the detail. As
yeah,
he's on this year, 4 years, X amount of money, gave up 4 draft picks. He's from this area, so you get the facts, right? or the
Yep.
quotes that someone says about you. Right. So someone will say, they said this. No, what we see nowadays is this media skew of you said this. Like I said on the radio this week that people are attacking Powell-Pepper on knuckleheads, but there was no
Yeah.
context put into that. I said
No.
they're knuckleheads. It was people on social media attacking Powell-Pepper on knuckleheads. They're trying to say he should have been banned for life, right? And I'm like, well, no, that you don't understand the game if you think he did that deliberately. If you think, oh, look on slow-mo. Yeah, look on, as I've always said, look on slow-mo to see where impact's made. Don't look on slow-mo other than judging things. Because we can't judge a plane or a car if it's going too fast. Cops don't go, oh, yeah, you've done speeding. We'll put it on slow-mo. You know what I mean? Like,
Speed
so
it up.
this is the bit that people get lost in the detail. And I get everyone has a device. Everyone's a reporter, whether you're a registered reporter of the AFL. But, the old days of you've got a crook ankle and you need to go do the food shopping and you got a strapping on. Now someone can have a phone, take a photo. That can be a lead sports story in the news. So that's
Yeah.
how big the focus is. But lots of people over the journey dealt with it differently. Some used it as ammo, some didn't. Some were real hotheads, some they struggle with, some totally just dismissed. And you go, that clearly didn't affect him. But then they come back and say, yeah, it was really affecting me. You're like, wow, I didn't see that. You know what I mean? Like everyone's
Mm.
different.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about preseason preparation. Obviously, we're in the midst of we've had the intra clubs, we've had different match simulations. Some are a bit weird. I think they did game situations at Collingwood, North Melbourne, but now we're into the community series, which would have been the NAB Cup sort of equivalent.
Wizard
Look,
Cup way back
we
when. Ansett
Wizard Cup
Cup was
and
the
Set
earliest
Cup,
one I played.
yeah, took
Yeah.
that home. Obviously, over time in your career, the importance of that preseason cup changed. But what was it sort of your preseason preparation like with these games? Like, there's obviously a difference between being a finalist and non-finalist when you come back, match simulation. What was it like for you prepping that preseason?
Well, you've just touched on all of it in one because when I first played, we played a preseason game with the Crows at the old Footy Park, Amy Stadium at the time.
Yep.
And we got 51,000 people there,
Yeah, jeez.
sold out. And I actually thought at the time, while we were playing Adelaide, that was because we didn't travel. But I thought it diluted showdowns. And eventually, over a period of time, it had, you know what I mean, at the old
Mhm.
Footy Park. And we go to Adelaide Oval, they're back strong again. COVID bounced back from that, all that. But for me, it was all about preparation. So you want a good touch, kick a couple of goals, feel good, play well, but wasn't the be all and end all. You know what I mean? Because there was no premiership points off the back of it. So the whole theory early days was if you win your first game, you go, cool, we want to win the first game. Then, we might win the next game. And then I think you might have ended up playing 4 trial games. And if you played in the final, you could win, and the club would make 300,000, 200,000, whatever it was in promo money. So you go, that's good. And then it turned into the players got some promo money, so they tried a bit hard. And eventually it was all about preseason management. So the AFL then goes, well, that was the latest one was the NAB Cup. Well, I think it was. They come back with, well, we could do this, we could beef up the prize money, and in the end, the players were like, as I was getting on in, and I didn't need preseason games under my belt. You need it from preparation. I didn't need 100% final, fireworks, all that sort of stuff. You're like, we're here to win the main things. So we were lucky enough early days to win one in 2001, 2002. And then we didn't win one again. Don't get me wrong, it was good doing that, but then you're always reset. I remember playing, it was around the North Melbourne one and Carey situation where we actually won the final. I think it was 02. We beat Richmond with our regular preseason, a week off, and got belted by North Melbourne round 1.
Yep.
And it was a reality check. So the preparation for me is all about the good thing about the preseason now, like this week. I'll commentate the game between Port and Fremantle at Alberton, is that from an analyst point of view and from a club point of view separately, I've just quickly seen teams that come through, and you can only look at the one teams, and you look at some of the teams last night that played. They look like they're settling their lineups for round 1.
Yeah.
Right. And you're in a situation where your whole focus is your preparation for your season. And your main focus is round 1, followed by round 2, followed by round 3. And then the odd week at a time is absolutely week at a time, because you start looking ahead around 6, we should beat this team. A couple of injuries, bit of form, all of a sudden round 6 looks a bit different against the bottom team. So for me, it was always about preparation. So play well, get some touch, because that's the stuff under match conditions against an opposition. So you spend all summer trying to work on things, getting fitter, getting better kicking, against your own teammates who know what you're trying to do as a forward line. You want to kick there, so they're covering that angle. But when you play against an actual opposition, like we saw in those trial games with 6 periods instead of 4 quarters, you're trialing your youngsters. The week later, then you have your pre-season hit out, 4 quarters, match conditions, proper rotations. That's all in preparation for round 1. And that's where I think bigger situation is really, let's face it, we saw big minutes played by all the gun players in periods this year already on 2 occasions, both in the preseason game and the preseason practice scrap game, or whatever they called it. You called it before, they had a special name for it, 6 terms, periods of time.
Intra-club, yeah.
Intra-clubs, yeah. And then you got there's your intra-club, which is your internals, but then then you've got your the one under 6 terms, and then you got your 4-quarter normal matches. Well, that's 3 games. You could have a pre-season game, right, against yourself, which you've been doing for 6 months anyway. Because at the end of my career, it used to be into running mode, fitness mode, ball mode, get weights. Yeah. Now it's balls from day one. So you're doing different breakdown drills, 10v8, 18v10, 18v16, 18v18, 5v5 midfield, 10v10 midfield, forward v backs, backs v forwards, all these types of things in preparation. And that's where I actually think you can extend the minor round by another 3 rounds. And that would teach teams to be more, and coaches to be more like English Premier League managers, to manage your stocks. So that if you are playing a bottom team and a bloke's got a needle, you don't play him for 2 weeks. You can manage your list and go, we can still win because it's a marathon, not a sprint. Whereas I still think by having 22 games, teams that are trying to win, coaches that are trying to hang in there under a lot of pressure, you just keep going full ball, full ball, full ball. And then sometimes you can just get bit by the injury at the wrong time of the year.
So you'd extend it to 25.
Yeah, you could. You could. Well, you've already extended it 1 anyway with gather round.
Yeah, so it's 23 at the moment.
Yeah, you could play 25 over 26 weeks or 28 weeks. You know what I mean? I don't know. Or 27 weeks, and then plus finals. Or play a bigger final series. I don't know. And it just seems that the more games available, the more money that the broadcasters will pay. Well, why would you be, getting all excited about preseason games being streamed online when you could be doing the real things, which is not much different? And if, for example, Sam Walsh or last year and Ollie Wines or who has others that have had slower recoveries, or this year Rory Sloane, you manage them to come back at round 5 instead of round 1 because you're forcing them and they get back ahead of time. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of just an idea on the outside to go, instead of rushing for the now because and I've always had a theory that I was a player that rushed towards round 1. But once you feel comfortable, you didn't rush for round 1. Oh, you got to be ready for round 1. No, I'm not sure. Probably not. Oh, are you worried about it? No, because round 1's time changes between round 2 and then round 3 and round 4. It looks probably 4 or 5 different faces there. If you come back prepared for round 1 and you're not ready, you could do an extra 2 weeks mini pre-season and be prepared for round 3. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Where you could just manage it better. And I think that's where the game's headed. And I think Craig McRae's appears to have done that from a public point of view very well in terms of managing players, managing roles, managing expectations, no set go-to midfielders. Even in the stage that Nick Dacos misses the last 4 or 5 weeks of the year, and come back and play an unbelievable role and wins more contested ball in the grand final than anyone with a busted leg. You know what I mean? But they had so many other players that could pick up the slack, and it's a real role-playing team.
Yeah, no, they definitely nailed that. Tom Mitchell, even as a sub, you have a
superb
Brownlow medalist. Yeah, he was unreal when he came on.
And he might not, and guarantee he probably didn't like it, but he likes it now. Dominated the grand final, and he's got a premiership medallion hanging around his neck.
Exactly it. Well, next week is opening round, Treaders. So we'll be back to talk about the opening round from both Queensland and New South Wales in rugby league territory, which will be a bit of fun. And then we're into round 1 where all 18 teams are playing. So that's all from us for the House of Footy podcast, but we shall see you next week and chat then.
See you then.